Day 91. Judges chapter 6 and 7. There are seasons in life when everything feels overwhelming. When pressure comes from every side, when fear becomes normal, and survival replaces purpose. They were not just struggling, they were hiding. We will begin with the first whisper when life pushes you into hiding. The oppression of Midian was brutal. So brutal that people abandoned their homes and began living in caves, mountains, and strongholds. Not because they wanted to, but because fear forced them to. Sometimes life doesn't just challenge you, it pushes you into survival mode. You may not be hiding in caves today, but you could be hiding emotionally, financially, spiritually. Smiling outside, but struggling inside. Functioning but fearful. And yet, even in hiding, God sees you. God calls you where you feel smallest is the theme of the next whisper. Then comes Gideon. Not a warrior on a battlefield, but a man hiding while working. And when God calls him to save Israel, his response is painfully honest. "Pardon me, my Lord, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my family." God's call will often meet you at your point of insecurity. Gideon wasn't confident, he wasn't ready, he didn't feel qualified, and maybe, neither do you. But God was not looking at Gideon's resume, he was looking at his availability. The other part of this scripture whisper is all about God calming our fear before he uses us. When Gideon encountered God, he became afraid. Because encountering the divine often reveals our fragility. But God said something powerful. "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." Before God sends you forward, he speaks peace into your fear. God doesn't ignore your fear, he addresses it. Because you cannot walk in purpose while being controlled by panic. God then gave Gideon an unusual instruction. Tear down your father's altar to Baal. Cut down the Asherah pole, and use that same wood to sacrifice to God. This was not just spiritual, it was personal. It meant confronting what was wrong in his own house. You cannot fight external battles if internal compromises remain. Many people want public victories, but avoid private obedience. Gideon had to destroy what was familiar before stepping into what was divine. When the people woke up and saw what Gideon had done, they were angry, they wanted him punished. But his father made a bold statement. If Baal really is a god, let him defend himself. And just like that, truth exposed deception. Anything that needs constant human defense may not be from God. False systems, false beliefs, false dependencies. They collapse when truth stands still. Let false gods defend themselves. You don't always need to fight everything. Sometimes, you just need to stand firm. Seeking confirmation is not weakness, it is human, as we learn from the actions of Gideon before he went on to do God's assignment, and that will be the context of the next whisper. You see, Gideon still struggled with doubt, so he asked God for a sign, using a fleece. First he placed the fleece on the ground, asking that only the fleece be wet with dew. The next morning, he squeezed it, and a bowl full of water poured out. Then he asked again, this time reversing the condition. And that night, God did it. Strange, you may assume, but God is patient with sincere seekers, even when they ask twice. This is not about testing God carelessly. It's about seeking clarity when your heart truly wants to obey. God understands hesitation, but he responds to sincerity. Then we see how God had to reduce available resources to reveal his power. Gideon's army is ready, thousands of men prepared for battle. But God said, it's too many. Why? Because if they win, they will take the glory. So God reduced them again and again, until only 300 men remained. The lesson here is, sometimes God removes what you rely on to reveal what he can do. This is uncomfortable, because we like security, we like numbers, we like backup plans. But God sometimes works best when your options are limited. Even with 300 men, Gideon was still afraid. And God didn't shame him for it. Instead, he said, "If you are afraid, go down to the camp with your servant." Notice that. God acknowledged his fear and provided reassurance. When Gideon went, he overheard a dream, confirming victory. God does not wait for perfect courage. He walks with you through fear. God meets you in your fear, not after it. Now Gideon is ready. He gathers the 300 men and says, "Watch me, follow my lead, do exactly as I do." No long speeches, no complex strategies. Just example. True leadership is lived before it is declared. Leadership is first demonstrated, not announced. People follow what they see, not just what they hear. Armed not with swords, but with trumpets, jars and torches. They surrounded the enemy. At the right moments they broke the jars, blew the trumpets, and shouted. Confusion broke out in the enemy camp. They turned on themselves. What we must have seen repeatedly as we read the scripture is that God's strategies may not make sense, but they always produce results. Victory doesn't always come the way you expect. Sometimes, God fights in ways you cannot predict, because victory does not always look conventional. The Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeb, were captured. Their defeat marked the end of oppression, but their names were tied to places: the rock of Oreb, the winepress of Zeb. Your victories leave markers, testimonies for others to remember. What God brings you through becomes evidence for someone else. From hiding in caves to leading 300 men into victory, Gideon's story is not about perfection, it is about process. It is about a God who meets you in fear, walks with you through doubt, and uses you, despite your limitations. So if you feel small today, if you feel uncertain, if you feel unqualified, remember this: God does not need your strength, He needs your willingness. And sometimes, the greatest victories begin with the quietest whispers.